Okay. The next is the cell physiology and transportation across the cell membrane. Okay, so these are the objectives. At the end of the lecture, we are able to discuss about the cell structures and able to discuss the function of the structure in the cell, and mainly these are the organelles, okay, and able to list the types and the function of membrane proteins. There are membrane proteins we are going to discuss. So we are able to discuss about those membrane proteins. And finally, we are expected to discuss the cell transportation, because the cell needs different different nutrients. Okay, so we are expected to discuss about these all issues. Okay, so cells are the smallest both structural and functional unit of our life. Because why they are called structural unit? Because these are one of the components in the body. We discussed yesterday, if you remember, how our body is organized. So first of all, there are atoms, okay, and those atoms combine and form molecules, and those molecules can be biological molecules. Those are functioning in a life, and those molecules combine and form organelles, and those organelles again form a cell, and you can have huge number of cells. Okay, so cells are structural component of the body. Why they are called functional? Because almost all the processes in the body are because of our cells. So cells are the smallest structural and functional unit of a life. And when you say smallest, it is relative to organs, tissue, and systems. Okay, sorry. Otherwise, there are components in our body less than cells, like organelles or the molecules or atoms, which are less than the cells. So when you say smallest, relative to like tissue or relative to the organs, okay? Otherwise, they are small in size and they are ranging 10 to 20 micrometer, but it depends on the type of cells in our body, okay? They are large in number. So in adults, the number of cells ranging from 75 to 100 trillion. They are huge number, but you can categorize this huge number of cells into 4 groups or 4 tissues. So you can have cells, okay, having related structure and function, then one group, one type of tissue, and as other cells having again some other structure and function form another group or another tissue, so that you can have the nervous tissue, the muscle tissue, epithelial tissue, and the connective tissue. So all the cells can be categorized under these 4 types of tissues. Okay, actually you'll see this one in your histology. Okay, and there are two types of cells. Okay, the first are called eukaryotic cells. EU is true. Okay, the true cells. Okay, why they are called true cells? Because the organelles, okay, in such type of cells, okay, have their own membrane. So membrane bounded organelles are found in eukaryotic cells. Those cells that found in multicellular organisms like the human being. So if you see like the blood cells, like for instance, if you see the white blood cells are eukaryotic cells, the nerve cells like the neurons, the muscle cells, the fats, and the fat cells like the adipose tissue cells or the glandular cells are eukaryotic cells. But the others are called prokaryotic cells. The cells, those are found in unicellular organisms like the virus. Okay, okay, and there are differences between these 2 types of cells. Okay, so the first difference is in which type of organism these cells are found. So that eukaryotic cells are found in multicellular organism, and prokaryotic cells are found in a unicellular organism. One difference. The other is the size. So eukaryotic cells are a bit larger than prokaryotic cells. Okay, so there is that size difference. The other is there are organelles. Okay, there are organelles in both type of cells, but the organelles, those are found in eukaryotic cells, have membrane. Okay, that organelle membrane. So the true that membrane bounded organelles are found in eukaryotic cells. But in the case of prokaryotic cells, even though there are organelles inside the cell, those organelles lack membrane. So membrane bounded organelles are not found in prokaryotic cells. Okay. The other difference is the DNA. Okay, the shape of the DNA or the chromosomes. So in the case of eukaryotic cells, there are 23 pairs of chromosomes, 22 autosomal chromosomes. Those determine our behavior. Okay, and one sex chromosomes that determine sexual behaviors. Okay, so there are 23 pairs of chromosomes in eukaryotic cells, but in prokaryotic cells there is a single chromosome, and there is circular chromosome or circular DNA. Like for instance, if you see the DNA of the virus is very different from the DNA of the human cell. Okay, so these are some of the difference between eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells, and you are expected to know the difference at least. Okay. Otherwise, our cells have the different functions like transportation. For instance, if you see the red blood cells transport gas like oxygen, carbon dioxide, okay, sometimes carbon monoxide, which is very dangerous. Okay, all cells are very important to defend your body against the pathogens. Like these are the white blood cells. You'll see actually this one in your hematology courses in detail. Okay, and protection is related to defensive, and you can add more function of your cells. Like for instance, if you see the epithelial cells in your skin, sorry, the epithelial tissue of your skin is made from the cells, and those cells can be taken as the primary immune structure. Okay, because they defend the soft tissue against the pathogens or the microbes and so on. Okay, so cells have different functions. That's why they are called the functional unit of the life. And when you see the structure of a given cell, here one cell, okay, one cell, like the red blood cell, whatever the type of cell. Then when you see that cell, there are a structure. So we are talking about animal cells. Okay, we are talking about the human physiology, not plant physiology. So we are not going to discuss about the cell wall, no cell wall in animal cell actually. So the first structure is called the plasma membrane or the cell membrane. So this is a structure that separates the given cell from its environment. It's called the cell membrane. Okay, one structure. The next is cytoplasm, and the last is the nucleus. So at least you should know the structure. Okay, otherwise the arrangement, the organization, and so on is or should be discussed in your anatomy. But at least you should know that there are structures. Okay, so the first is called the plasma membrane, or you can say the cell membrane, and that cell membrane is double, not single, double. So what biological molecule or what biological molecules make our cell membrane is double? We'll see that one. And it is very thin. It is around 7 nanometer. It is thin and flexible. Cell membrane should be flexible. When our cell, like the red blood cell, is there to pass through your blood vessel, it should change its shape. That is if the cell membrane is flexible. Otherwise, your cell is going to rupture. So flexibility is very important. Okay, so the cell membrane is flexible. Okay, and composed of the biological macromolecules. So what are the composition of the cell membrane? The first are called the lipids. The lipids, mainly the phospholipids, okay? Proteins, carbohydrates, cholesterol are the major biological molecules made your cell membrane, okay? And that cell membrane is selective barrier. It is a barrier, and that's selective. That means not that is not all substance, okay, is allowed to get into the cell through the cell membrane. So there is a kind of selection, unlike that of the cell wall in a plant, okay? Okay, please attend the lecture, okay? It's very important. You should attend, okay? I'm looking at students who left. I'm that the lecture. I'm looking at your name even, okay? And the cell membrane is very important for transportation, because if the cell needs like nutrient, glucose should get into the cell through the cell membrane. So there is transportation. Then supporting the cell, because the cell membrane is a barrier, okay? So it protects, it supports the given cell, and it retains cytoplasmic content. I mean that there are contents in the cytoplasm of a given cell, like there is fluid, that fluid is called intracellular fluid, or that's called the cytosol. So that fluid should be retained in the cytoplasm. That is, if the cell membrane is intact, if the cell membrane is normal, okay? The other function of our cell membrane is recognition. Ability of our immune cell, okay, to recognize the foreign bodies, like the pathogens. So, for instance, if virus is going to enter into your body, our immune cell should differentiate that virus from our host or normal cells, because of the protein found on the cell membrane, and that protein is called a recognition protein. Okay, so the cell membrane has protein, and that protein is very important for recognition. So since that protein is a part of your cell membrane is very important for recognition. Okay, and communication. Like for instance, if two or more cells need to be communicated with each other, the cell membrane is very important, because there are proteins in the cell membrane make two or more cells communicate with each other. Okay. The other thing, there is what's called pattern recognition receptors. The pattern recognition receptors are protein found in the cell membrane that recognize the pattern of the pathogens, like the pattern of the SARS, okay, severe acute respiratory syndrome, COVID-2, or that's called the COVID or the coronavirus. So that virus has a pattern, and that pattern should be recognized by our immune cell. That's possible if our cells, contain recognition protein. Okay. The other function is foreign body attachment. I mean that the foreign bodies, like the pathogens or the microbes, get into our body. Okay. Then that foreign body is going to attach it on on protein found in the cell membrane. For instance, if you see HIV virus is going to attach it on CD4 cell, CD4 protein, or CD4 marker found on helper T cells. You'll see this one in your immunology course actually. Okay, and even the coronavirus should attach it on membrane protein found in our cell. Okay, maintain chemical or electrical gradient. Like for instance, we have said that sodium, or the concentration of sodium inside outside the cell is much higher than the inside. That's called concentration gradient or chemical gradient. Or the concentration of potassium inside the cell is much higher than the outside. That's called chemical or concentration gradient. And when the cell is found at rest, the net charge inside is negative, and the net charge outside is positive. That is called electrical gradient. And these gradients or difference, okay, are because of the cell membrane and control certain reaction in the cell. So these are that some of the function of the cell membrane that separate a given cell from its environment. Okay, and we have said that our cell membrane is double, so you can have outer and inner membrane, outer membrane, inner membrane, and that double layer of your cell membrane is because of the presence of the phospholipids, not because of the carbohydrates, not because of the proteins, not because of the cholesterols. That is the double membrane is because of the phospholipid. That is why the double membrane is called lipid bilayer. Bi is two, there is layer, lipid is mainly the phospholipid. Okay, so you can have the outer and the inner membrane, and the composition and the arrangement of the composition in the outer and in the inner membrane is not the same, so that your cell membrane is asymmetry, not symmetrical, not identical, and that is because of variation in arrangement and variation in the composition. Okay, and the phospholipids, if you see the single phospholipid, okay, or if you see the structure of the single phospholipid, you will come across with the head and the tail. So the head is called hydrophilic. Okay, it can react with water. That's called water loving, or that's called hydrophilic. And the tail, or that's called the hydrocarbon tail, is called hydrophobic. Okay, so a single phospholipid molecule has amphipathic nature. That is both hydrophilic and hydrophilic properties. Okay, so these properties, the amphipathic property of phospholipid molecule makes the cell membrane is double. Okay, otherwise there are carbohydrates. So if you see the 3%, the 3% of the dry mass of the cell membrane is carbohydrate, and those carbohydrates combined with protein, so that you can have glycoprotein, or combined with lipids, that's called glycolipid. Okay, and these are very important for recognition. Okay, like for instance, or it is very important even for blood clotting. Okay, we have said that the platelets are aggregated on the ruptured area through the positive feedback homeostasis control system, and when those platelets aggregated in the ruptured area make stabilized by fibrin, that's called blood clotting. And for that blood clotting, like glycocalyx found on the membrane of the endothelial cell is very important. Okay, so that the carbohydrate found on the cell membrane is very important for blood to be clotted, and that blood clotting has both advantage and disadvantage. You should know when clotting is taken as advantage and not taken as advantage, or taken as disadvantage. You should know that one. The other composition in your cell membranes are proteins. So the 50% of the dry mass of the cell membrane is because of protein, or because of proteins. And those proteins can be intrinsic. I mean that proteins found inside the cell membrane are called intrinsic proteins, or found on the periphery, mainly facing to the cytoplasm. These are called extrinsic. So the membrane proteins can be intrinsic and extrinsic. Intrinsic and extrinsic. Okay. The last are the cholesterol. So the 13% of the dry mass of the cell membrane are cholesterol, and that cholesterol control the fluidity of the cell membrane, because we have said that the cell membrane should be flexible, and that flexibility depends on the extent of the fluidity of the cell membrane. Otherwise, if the cell membrane get dry, flexibility may be lost, and that is dangerous for our cells in the body. Okay, so this is the cell membrane. So when you're looking at the cell membrane using electron microscope, the appearance is look like this one. Okay, the C. Okay, or the phospholipids can be taken as the C, and there are proteins. Okay, here and there. So when you see the cell membrane, it is very attractive, and that's called mosaic model. Mosaic is something. Okay, so look for if you are looking at a sea, okay, or ocean, that, and if you are full suspended on ocean or on sea, that's very attractive. Okay, such nature is observed in our cell membrane. That's why cell membrane is called fluid mosaic model. Okay, so in this cell membrane, you are looking at proteins like intrinsic protein, or another name for intrinsic protein is called integral protein. Why they are called intrinsic? Because they are found inside the cell. Okay. Why they are called integral protein? Because they are highly integrated with the lipids, or integrated with the lipid bilayer. Okay. Or they are called transmembrane protein. Why? Because they cross the whole cell membrane from the outside to the inside. Otherwise, you can have peripheral membrane. Okay. Peripheral membrane proteins, or these are called extrinsic proteins. So these proteins are found in the inner membrane, facing to the cytoplasm, okay, or facing towards the cytoplasm. Otherwise, you can have the glycoprotein, okay, glycoprotein, carbohydrates combined with the protein. So you will have the glycoprotein, protein with carbohydrate attached. And this is very important for our immune cells to recognize the pathogens get into your body, okay? And you have the fibrous or the collagen, okay, where the cell rests, okay, on the basal lamina. You can have the collagen, and you can have the glycolipids, carbohydrates combined with lipid glycolipids. You can have cholesterol. You can have filaments or the cytoskeletons. Actually, the filaments or the cytoskeletons are proteins found in the cytoplasm that maintain the shape of the given cell. So different cells have different shape. For instance, if you see the red blood cells and the white blood cells, they do have different shape because of the cytoskeletons, because of the proteins found inside the cell. Okay. So this is called the cell membrane, the first part or the first structure in our cell. Okay. So actually, we mentioned some points about the integral protein. So integral proteins are proteins found inside the cell. So these integral proteins are proteins; those are highly integrated with the lipid bilayer or with the phospholipids. Okay. Otherwise, they are called transmembrane protein because they cross the whole cell membrane and they are found inside. So they are called intrinsic protein. And strongly combined with the lipid bilayer. That's why they are called. So if they are combined with the lipid bilayer strongly, it is not easy to remove those proteins without affecting. If you have that stone that inside the ground or inside the soil, we are expected to dig out to remove the stone. So you are destroying. So if you need to check the integral protein from the cell membrane, you should destroy the cell membrane. For instance, if you need to analyze the integral protein from a given cell, then that checking out the protein is not easy. It is tough task, okay, because they are integral protein. They are highly integrated with the lipid bilayer. Most of them are glycoproteins, and that most of these proteins are combined with carbohydrate, so that they are glycoproteins, and they serve as receptors. You know, receptors are proteins those receive chemicals. Like for instance, look, the GPCR. Okay, G protein coupled receptor, or the guanine, okay, guanine protein coupled receptor, okay. So these receptors receive like hormones. So you have hormone, okay, secreted somewhere in your body and get into the blood and diffused out from the blood into the tissue where the receptors are found. So those hormones are going to attach it on the receptors, and these receptors are the integral proteins. Ion channels. Ion channels are proteins found again in the cell membrane where ion enter into the cell or leave the cell. For instance, if the sodium needs to enter into the cell, it enter into the cell through sodium ion channel. Or if potassium needs to leave out the cell, it leave out the cell through potassium ion channels, okay? Or the carriers. Carriers are proteins those carry substance into the cell or from the cell into extracellular compartment like the permease and the pumps. So the collective name of permease and pumps are called the carriers, okay? The carriers. The next are peripheral or extrinsic proteins. Okay, peripheral or extrinsic proteins. The proteins those are attached to the inner membrane, facing to the cytoplasm, and not penetrate the hydrophobic core of the membrane, so that it is easy to take out such extrinsic or peripheral proteins, easily removed, easily take out. Okay. And these can be enzymes, like for instance, the protein kinases. Okay, kinases are enzymes. Those facilitate addition of phosphate on proteins. Okay, so that's called the protein kinases. The phospholipases. Okay, so these peripheral proteins act as enzymes in the cell membrane. Okay, and important for signaling, cell signaling, or that's called cell transduction process, through which chemicals induce a response from a given or from the target cell is called signal transduction. And that is or that needs enzyme, okay, found in the cell membrane, and those can be the peripheral proteins. Okay, anchoring or attaching certain components in the cell membrane. Okay, integral proteins, and cytoskeleton should be bind to maintain the shape of the cell, and that is attributed by the peripheral or extrinsic proteins. So look these proteins in figure 2. Okay, so you can have extrinsic, and that you can have outer membrane, and you can have inner membrane. Inner membrane is the membrane that faces towards the cytoplasm, and the outer membrane is the membrane that faces towards the extracellular compartment. Okay, so you can have this plasma protein. Okay, so this plasma protein is intrinsic and transmembrane protein through which substance enter or leave the cell. So they can be taken as transporter protein. Okay, or there are proteins that act on enzyme. Okay, enzyme proteins. So they speed up certain reaction takes place in the cell membrane. Okay, and cell surface receptor. Look, for instance, you can have chemical outside the cell that's going to bind on the receptor. So there should be a key-lock match between the binding site on the receptor and the chemical that's going to bind. Okay, there should be a match. Okay, otherwise, if there is mismatch, no binding. Okay, for instance, if the binding site on your receptor is affected by drug or affected by virus, then no message is going to be transmitted. No chemical is going to bind, because the binding site has been already occupied by the virus or some drugs. Okay. Otherwise, you can have cell surface identity marker. You know, identity marker, like the major histocompatibility complex is one of the marker found on the cell membrane, and this is very important for identification. Okay, cell adhesion proteins found in the cell membrane. Okay, those make two or more cells attach to each other. That's called adhesion, attaching. Okay, and attachment to the cytoplasm. Sorry, the cytoskeleton. Cytoskeletons are proteins found inside the cell. We have said that one. Okay, and there are some components found nearer to the cell membrane, and those may be required to be attached to each other by certain proteins found in the cell membrane. So if you summarize the function of the membrane proteins found in our cell membrane, looks the following. The first function is receiving chemicals. Okay, so they are called receiving proteins, or these are called receptors, or they are very important for transportation, for a substance to enter into the cell or leave the cell. That's called transportation, and the proteins are called transporter proteins. Okay, transporter proteins can be classified into uniporters, okay, symporters, and antporters. So what is the difference between these three proteins? So when you say uniporters are transporter proteins, those transport a single substance at a given time, or one substance at a given time. That's called uniporter. Uni is one, okay? Otherwise, in the case of symporter and antiporter, collectively they are called co-transporter, okay? Co-transporters. So when you say co-transporters, these are transporter proteins. Those transport two or more substances at the same time into the cell or out of the cell. Such transporter proteins are called co-transporters. And the co-transporters can be symporters or antporters. So when you say symporters, these are co-transporter proteins, transport two or more substances at the same time in the same direction. At the same time in the same direction. Otherwise, if those co-transporter proteins transport two or more substances at the same time in opposite direction, these are called antiporters. So you should take notes. Okay, otherwise after some time it may be difficult for you to understand what is uniporters, what is importers, and antiporters. I'm talking to you, and better to take notes. Okay. Otherwise, you can have the link structure. These are the proteins that are found in the cell membrane. Those link certain components, biological components found in the cell membrane. Like for instance, the integrin. Integrin is one of the protein that link different components that are found inside, and those are found around the cell membrane. The third function of membrane proteins is to communicate. Okay, for instance, if two or more cells require to communicate, okay, they need proteins. Okay, like for instance here, and there is another cell next to the first cell, and you can have two proteins in one cell, another two proteins, okay, in the next cell, and those proteins protrude out, and then they join. So that junction is called gap junction, which is very, very, very important in excitable cells like the muscle cells and the nerve cells. The gap junction. So you'll see the gap junction in your nervous system. So you discuss that one in your I think the last module in your training, or you'll see the gap junctions, particularly which is called intercalated disc in your cardiovascular system. Okay, or module 10, I don't know. Okay. Otherwise, you can have recognition proteins. Actually, we mentioned the recognition proteins. The proteins, those try to identify or make our cells identify the foreign bodies like the virus, the bacteria, or some other pathogens. Okay. The fourth is enzymatic reaction, because there are enzymes, and those enzymes are proteins found in the cell membrane. And as you know, enzymes speed up certain reaction. So certain reaction in the cell membrane is controlled by proteins found in the cell membrane, and those proteins are enzymes. Okay. cell addition. Okay, addition is attachment actually. Like for instance, if those platelets found in the circulation are required that move into the ruptured area of your blood vessel, okay, and if those platelets, those are aggregated or accumulated in the ruptured area, need to be stabilized, one platelet should be attached with another. That's called platelet adhesion or platelet attachment. So there are adhesion proteins found in each of the platelets, okay? The other is connecting the cell with cytoskeleton. Actually, we mentioned this one in the earlier figure. Keeping the integrity of the membrane. So these are some of the function of the membrane protein, so that you can add more. Okay, you can add more functions of the cell membrane proteins. Okay, and you should know that the membrane proteins are different from the plasma proteins. You know, plasma proteins are proteins found in your blood, but when you say membrane proteins, are proteins found in your cell membrane. Otherwise you can have the plasma proteins or proteins found in your blood, like for instance, the fibrinogen, the globulin, the albumin, and other blood clotting factors are found in the blood after they are synthesized and released from the liver. Okay, so this is the first part. The first part is the cell membrane. Then the next is the cytoplasm. Actually, the cytoplasm is the space between the nucleus and the cell membrane. It's very simple actually. Okay, you take single cell and see the part of a given cell. Okay, and this cytoplasm or the space contain fluid, and that fluid is called cytosol, or it's called intracellular fluid. We have said that, for instance, if you are a male or if you are a man with 70 kilogram weight, total weight, then the total amount of water found in your body should be 42 liters. You should calculate that one. Okay, and 2/3 of this is found, okay, 2/3, and the remaining 1/3 is found outside the cell. Okay, so 28 liters of water is found inside the cell, and the remaining 14 is found outside the cell. So the fluid found inside the cytoplasm or inside the cell is called cytosol, or it's called intracellular fluid. So you should know that, for instance, if I am going to ask, calculate the amount of fluid found in your tissue. If you are, for instance, assume there is a man with 65 kilogram total body weight, okay, then calculate the amount of water found in his tissue. You should know that. So you should know the proportion. That proportion should be maintained constant because of physiological process. Okay, that's called homeostasis. So homeostasis is everything in physiology. Okay, you'll take physiology courses for the coming 2 years, and almost all is maintain of homeostasis. Homeostasis is very important concept in physiology. Okay, because we have said that any illness, any problem is because of homeostasis failure. Okay, so we are here, or we are going to award it with a degree, mainly medical degree, and that is that to manage certain diseases, because there are diseases disorder, because there are failure of homeostasis. So homeostasis is everything in medicine. Okay. So not only fluid that's found in the cytoplasm, still there are organelles found in the cytoplasm. So organelles are structures suspended in the cytoplasm. Okay, like for instance, nucleus is one of the organelles. Mitochondria. Actually, we'll see those organelles found in eukaryotic cells, because these are the eukaryotic cells found in multicellular organisms like the human being. Okay, so prokaryotic cells are not our business. Okay, because those are found in unicellular organisms like the virus and certain bacteria, and you'll see that one in microbiology. Okay. So organelles are called the machinery of the cells. You know why? You know why? Because each organelle is found in the cytoplasm has their own function. We'll see the function of each organelle in our cells. That's why they are called the machinery of the cell, and they do have their own function actually. And generally, in the cytoplasm or in the space between the nucleus and the cell, you can have fluid, cytosol, and in that fluid, you can have glucose, you can have proteins, electrolytes, and other components. Pure these electrolytes, glucose, and other cell activity control proteins. Okay, and you can have dispersed particles like the fatty acid, or that's called the monoglyceride. You can have the glycoproteins and certain excretory granules. And I think it is good to have some time. I'm sorry, do you agree? If you need some time rest. Yes, okay. Okay, so we'll get back after 10 to 15 minutes. You agree? Say something, please. Are you there? Oh, okay, Bethlehem. Okay, thank you, thank you. Okay, 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 thank you. Then